Hello everybody, this is Alan Gibbons, organiser of the campaign for the book. I'm just sending you a short message to say well done on holding this conference and I hope you have a great day. Personally, as you hear this, I'll be in Kenya. I'll be going to the ASA International Conference and doing some school visits, and I've got to go on a safari. I mean, it's a tough life, but somebody's got to do it. A few points about where we stand at the moment. The campaign for the book was established to work alongside other bodies like the Library Campaign, like Unison, like the users groups, to try and defend our libraries. I was increasingly concerned as an author visiting schools and libraries that libraries weren't the high-profile institutions they should be in British society. Everybody I knew knows that a reading child is a successful child. The National Literacy Trust points out that a child that goes to a library is twice as likely as one who doesn't to be a good reader. It seemed blindingly obvious that we should defend and protect our libraries, and yet, as the Parliamentary Committee said recently, libraries have been woefully led for years. Poor book stock in some areas, sometimes shabby buildings, very often opening hours that are utterly incomprehensible to the public. But then came a much sharper focus on the state of libraries. In Doncaster in 2008, the local council and mayor decided to cut £600,000 from the budget of the library. It was time to act. I called on the services of fellow authors and we started to basically create a ruckus to try and point out that libraries were being woefully betrayed by the government, by some local elected representatives. And then came a real shock. Because of the financial crash, there was going to be public spending cuts of 28%, front-loaded in the first year. And even worse, libraries were top of the agenda for the cuts. So it was time to act on a big scale. We held a conference, Campaign for the Book Conference, in Birmingham in 2009. And alongside other bodies, we were going to make a big noise to try and defend libraries. And I think we did that quite successfully. We held pickets, we held petitions, we sent open letters. The press had never had so much coverage of libraries. So a crisis had been both a threat and it had been a promise. It had been a spur to action. And I think after that, we reduced their room to manoeuvre. Last year, on February the 5th, there were 110 demonstrations that we called, probably drawing in something like 10,000 people. And the user groups, the families, the local communities, they showed that they thought libraries were precious. They thought they were community hubs. They thought that they were providers of books, of ICT advice, of general information, and that they needed a good librarian providing a good service there in the library. And it got huge press coverage on the BBC, in the newspapers, and was very successful. Was the battle all over? Well, far from it. You only have to take a look at what's happening now. There is a high-profile legal challenge by campaigners in Gloucester and in Somerset, where 23 libraries are being threatened in all. Doncaster has just announced that it plans to sell off 12 of its libraries. And the threat is manifold. First of all, there is volunteering. No problem with volunteering if it supplements a core public library service staffed by full-timers. However, the idea is to replace full-timers almost wholesale in many areas, in many branch libraries, by volunteers. In areas that have had successful community volunteer libraries, it is not the case that a few people can stock basically an Oxfam shop and make it successful. In the areas where there are good volunteer libraries, it has taken a huge team, a very focused management team, and an enormous set of volunteers. That might not be the case in an area like, say, Bolton, say Doncaster, where you need half the libraries staffing by volunteers. Is there that level of human resource in the area? A second huge problem is falling book stocks. They are being savaged in almost every locality. Then there's the vexed issue of opening hours. Almost universally across the country, opening hours are being put under threat. And finally, there is the incomprehension of some elected representatives, like Keith Mitchell in Oxfordshire, who was dared to attack Philip Pullman and made the ludicrous proposition that essentially you set libraries against social care. This is really insulting. The Conservatives have recently found almost £2 billion for weekly bin collections and to freeze the council tax. No sign of there is no alternative, there is no money. They can find money, even in these straitened times, to keep essential public services. And can there be any more essential public service than the British Library Service? At the moment, is it the case that everywhere you go, children are poring over Dostoevsky, that there are cranial injuries from children being concussed by falling books in overstocked shelves? Far from it. We are 25th in international reading comparisons. We are daring to think about cutting 600 libraries. And then you go to the best, to South Korea, top of the reading rankings, and guess what? They're opening 180 new libraries. Reading is essential. A reading child is a successful child. A community that has a thriving library is a community whose elderly people are not isolated. Libraries are an absolutely core public service. Information, imagination, the journey that a good book takes you on is absolutely central to every community. There are 320 million visits every year. The recent decline in libraries has been arrested, and now a much more stable picture can emerge. But it can only emerge, we can only get the libraries of the future if we keep the libraries of today open. So essentially, we have a huge battle. We've got to petition and write and lobby and pester our elected representatives. We've got to keep up a national battle over which services deserve to be funded. And finally, we have to keep drawing attention to the fact that when the Conservatives, when the local representative of all political parties, and Labour has had just as bad a record as the Conservatives in local authorities, Lewisham and Brent and Bolton have been just as brutal as Somerset and Gloucestershire. But if there's a will, the local public library service can be protected. We've got to keep up that argument, and to that end, we are launching in the first week of February National Libraries Day. All of the major library organisations and book organisations are on board. The Society of Chief Librarians, SILIP, Unison, the Reading Agency, the list goes on and on and on. And what we want here is a really positive celebration of libraries on the Saturday and a celebration of school libraries and school library services in the week leading up to Saturday, February the 4th. If we can pull that off, and I'm absolutely convinced we can, the first make sure you book this day have been sent out by the major organisations. We have to make a thriving, bustling reading culture so that elected representatives know that we are not going to go gentle into this good night. So essentially, everybody there, we've got to redouble our efforts. We've got to take a look at the various arguments, rebut them. We have got to be at every single lobby and demonstration picket. And seriously, I think sometimes we've got to think about direct action. If they are determined to close a particular library and we think there's not much chance of volunteers being able to provide an alternative service, well, maybe we go in there, read the books, and when it closes, we don't go home. Simple as that. So I hope together we can march on to victory and we can defend the British Public Library Service. We can insist on its nature as a comprehensive and efficient service. We can make Britain proud to be a reading nation once again. Thanks very much.